We'll go through that. France politics. We have to talk about France because remember when Macron lost the election? Why is Macron still in charge of France? Isn't that weird? Yeah, I think it's weird. Facebook censorship. Apparently, what's his name? Mark Zuckerberg has copped to the US government censoring things on Facebook. And it seems it signals a shift in the wind, right? Like, that's weird that he's coming out and saying, yeah, the government pressured us to do this and so on and so forth. So, change from the last couple of years. Could it be he fears an incoming Trump administration? Who knows? But that's happening. I'll show that to you. We have to start at temporary foreign workers. They're reducing them. And I think this is Justin Trudeau setting up removal or temporarily pausing an unpopular policy before an election that it looks like he's going to lose. There's a lot to get to. Let's get to it. First, temporary foreign workers. Justin Trudeau says we're reducing the number of low-wage temporary foreign workers in Canada. The labor market has changed. Now is the time for our businesses to invest in Canadian workers and youth, he says. So, I mean, that's a stark contrast to more, and we need to bring in all sorts of people, et cetera, and even a stark contrast in where Trudeau was, well, I guess more in line with Trudeau was when he was running in 2014 against Prime Minister Harper. Rupa says, here's an op-ed in the Toronto Star in 2014. Mind-boggling reading this in 2024 when you consider who the author is, none other than Justin Trudeau. Here's some excerpts. Since taking office, Prime Minister Harper and the Conservative Party have transformed the temporary foreign worker program, which was originally designed to bring temporary workers on a limited basis when no Canadian could be found, into one that has brought in a large pool of vulnerable workers. The temporary foreign worker program is broken, action must be taken, and the government must explain to all Canadians why it took a series of high-profile examples of program abuse before the Conservatives acknowledged the flaws in their temporary foreign workers program. In the end, this is a basic issue of fairness for Canadians who need work and for vulnerable people who travel to Canada from abroad in search of a real opportunity to succeed. I believe it's wrong for Canada to follow the path for countries who exploit large numbers of guest workers who have no realistic prospect of citizenship. It's bad for our economy. It is in that it depresses wages for all Canadians, but it's even worse for our country. It puts pressure on our commitments to diversity and creates more opportunities for division and rancor. Well, that's true, and the division is very, very clear. I think it's interesting when one of the issues he says there's no real prospect of citizenship. The Liberals are going to fix that by just making everybody permanent residents. So blanket permanent residents, it overnight changes the numbers. So that talking point is gone, and Canadians who use that talking point can be corrected, right? And so Liberals love to correct people. Rupa finishes by saying what Trudeau accused the Harper Conservatives of back in 2014, he's been doing 100 times more damage to Canada's immigration system and economy. And he's created a backlash against immigration through excessive targets in the one Western country that didn't have a nativist backlash. And now we have it in full swing. Trudeau owns this disaster. Here's a link to the original op-ed. So that's interesting, and a lot of it's true. Candace Malcolm says nearly 500,000 Canadians accessing employment insurance, EI, welfare, as unemployment surges, and some conversations around EI and welfare in Canada. You can't access EI if you're unvaccinated as of 8 months ago. You can't access things that you pay in for if you don't follow the direction of this government or that government, provincial, federal, maybe municipal too. You might lose your job, et cetera, et cetera. 6Buzz is reporting the same. Justin Trudeau announces today the federal government will reduce the number of temporary foreign workers in Canada. People are expressing skepticism because it seems weird that all of a sudden he would change direction with his government, and perhaps it's just an announcement without any actual teeth. So maybe it's an announcement and they won't actually do anything, like we're going to build houses like they've announced for the last 10 years, right? And they haven't actually done anything about it in a particularly, well, like they haven't actually done anything about it. So interesting, right? Here's CBC. It says Liberals say they will rein in temporary foreign worker program after historic influx. This isn't really going in. This is a CBC article, and it's not really going into much more detail than kind of what's happening here already, or what I've already mentioned already. Kirk says Canada is finally making changes to the temporary foreign workers program that will go into effect September 26th. Some of us have worked hard for this, and so I'm so glad a step has been taken in the right direction. So apparently this is what's going to change immediately as of September 26th. Temporary foreign worker applications will be refused where unemployment is plus 6%. Max temporary foreign worker hiring on their workforce will go down from 20% to 10%. Workers hired via low-wage stream will be able to work for 1 year instead of 2. The changes focus on low-wage temporary foreign worker applications and leave out the Lima scams for everything else. Still need changes there. I want to point out that these changes by the Liberals have been brought with minimum pressure from Conservative politicians at all levels, municipal, provincial, and federal, who were mostly silent and cowardly on the topic and still are on the Lima scams. The Conservatives are going to do exactly this. They're signaling that they agree. They're signaling that they're going to pretty well do all the same thing, exactly the same thing. So this is an excerpt from the article, and it's just highlighting what I've just read. So basically, there you go. That's what's going on with temporary foreign workers. Here's Mark Miller, and they're talking about this back and forth. And well, here's just a bit of it. Here we go.
Experts, Mike Moffat, who's going to
too fast. Sorry. Try again.
Present before cabinet one day this week, has said that the government should eliminate entirely the low-wage temporary foreign worker stream and not just make tweaks around the edge, but just get rid of it because it's driving down wages. People who are coming here are willing to work for less than the prevailing wage. It's been particularly problematic for young people this summer. They haven't been able to get a job as they have in the past. Why are you still maintaining this low wage stream? Why is it something that you feel like you have to preserve?
Yeah, and again, I think Randy will answer this more completely, but again, it's the opinion of one person, even though he speaks to us and is an authority in the field. We disagree with him on some levels, we agree with him on others, but Randy can answer the rest.
John Paul, I'll say that some of the rhetoric out there is just downright unhelpful, and we're talking about making sure that we have businesses in rural and remote Canada that can actually stay open. And
this is a pivot, okay? Like, we're at a situation where we can't have, our kids can't find jobs. People who used to find jobs, those jobs are taken up by foreign workers, and the companies are having Canadian tax dollars subsidize those foreign workers at the detriment of our kids' jobs. Our tax subsidies are harming our kids. So in the face of that, they've been forced to wind that program down. And when asked these pointed questions, Boissonnault pivots to, listen, it was either we do this or your trans kid is committing suicide. It was either we do this or the whole economy collapses, which is bullshit. It's bullshit. It is making the same argument that the trans doctors make to pressure you into seeing it their way. It's nonsense, and he should be called out on it. And these people know it. Like, these people know it. It's not, this isn't something that they're unaware of. He is aware of what he's doing with his rhetoric, and so are all these liberals. So listen to Boissonnault threaten you, basically saying if we didn't flood the economy with people to work in these minimum wage jobs and take your kids' jobs, the economy would have collapsed. And I'm never mind.
It's just downright unhelpful. And we're talking about making sure that we have businesses in rural and remote Canada that can actually stay open. And if you're talking about 1 out of 10 workers or 2 out of 20 workers that actually keeps an inn working, and that inn is the only restaurant in that community, and that community is where the people who work to build that community reside on a temporary basis while they're building up that community, that's not something that I'm prepared as jobs minister to see disappear in rural and remote Canada. And we've seen other governments have knee-jerk reactions to this program and shut down the low-wage stream entirely, only to then turn around and have to bring it back entirely. So what have we done?
They shut it down and then they brought it back entirely. So yeah, so you better see it our way. Otherwise, we're just going to be right back here anyway. If that's their only solution, of course. During COVID, we saw pressure being applied, and then when people got upset with the pressure being applied in one area, they'd ease off that area, and then they'd put pressure on another area, right? And so I feel like the same thing is happening with the housing stuff. Too much pressure has been applied with this one area. People are upset, so they're easing off that area, but they're going to put pressure on another area. Where are they going to put pressure, you think? Housing. And Kirk says, instead of stopping mass immigration, Justin Trudeau Liberal government is moving on to another policy. Let's talk about it. They are planning to long-term lease out a plethora of unused federal government-owned real estate and lands for the right homes. Firstly, it speaks to just how much waste there is in government that taxpayers are upkeeping and paying for unproductive lands. Secondly, the government, who can't order a paperclip without a corruption scandal, will now move into residential real estate. Remember it being a provincial issue, according to Justin Trudeau? It is a provincial issue. All these lands should be providing a direct benefit to the generation of financial independence for Canadians and not a sweetheart deal for developers. What are the right homes? The last apartments Chrystia Freeland boasted about supporting are 330 square foot shitboxes for $1,800 a month in Victoria. Prepare for Soviet-style blocks across Canada. So this is Justin Trudeau's idea, and they're going to
homes across the country. You could build a lot of homes on the
right. They're going to infiltrate the residential real estate, and that will get them into the municipalities, and they'll have a big say because they'll have all these people living on their leased lands. It's like the University of Guelph leased land to businesses and things like that, and it's a 100-year lease or whatever, but they still own that property, and at the end of the 100-year lease they get the land back, and well, probably they'll extend the lease and so on and so forth. But it is a tightly woven, integrated partnership where the people who own the land have a big say. And do you think that if the people who own the land are the federal government, they won't use that to influence the municipality? Yeah, I think they will. It's a Trojan horse, and it's really, really not good, right? Let's move on to our grab bag of governance, and Mel Jolie will kick us off with her incompetence. I mean, here she is making a speech. Son of a Bench says Mel Jolie says Canadians are anxious because of foreign government instability causing supply chain issues. She then brings up Ukraine. Please explain what exactly Ukraine sends to Canada that we need and how it disrupts the supply chain. Ukraine doesn't have anything Canada, I don't think we import much from Ukraine. So that's weird, right? And here's another person responding to this whole supply chain issue. Alan says, okay, maybe I'm just missing something, but what do attacks by Russia on Kiev and by Israel on Hezbollah have to do with anxiety of our supply chains? What is she talking about again? Can anybody interpret the crazy lady? At least she's not wearing her pretend military garb this time. That's a win. It's kind of a win. Here's Mel Jolie.
To talk about different issues that are important to Canadians, including, of course, what is happening in the world. We know that a lot of the geopolitical instability is causing a lot of anxiety with Canadians. And also we know that affordability issues are linked to the fact that there are so many supply chains that have been disrupted because there are so many geopolitical tensions. And we saw it again today with what happened in Kyiv and across Ukraine. And of course we condemn these attacks by Russia. And at the same time, we saw it yesterday with the Hezbollah attack on Israel, and Israel standing to protect its own security. To talk about...
So that's why pasta is double the price it used to be. Next question. Yikes, right? Yikes. Obviously incorrect, right? It's the grocery store CEOs. It's Galen Weston's fault, says Jagmeet Singh. Yeah, right. It's not the grocery store CEOs. It's probably the carbon tax that is inflationary and increasing every year and would be scrapped if not for the NDP propping up the Liberal government. And, well, I've got some color on an election coming up. Dan McTeague thinks that, I think it's Gas Price Wizard, thinks that they're going to amalgamate parties, and I think that he's probably right. And I would have yesterday disagreed with that, but I think the way he lays it out, yeah, I agree with him. I think he's probably bang on. I think that's exactly how it's going to lay out, and I still think they're going to lose and not have enough to have a coalition, but that's going to be their goal, because that's the only way they retain power. And it's still really not enough. Okay. Rebel News is reporting Housing Minister Fraser blames businesses for an increase in low-wage temporary foreign workers after the pandemic, noting changes to the program could reduce the pressure on tens of thousands of housing units right across the country. So they're changing the temporary foreign worker program, and it was the businesses that needed it. Yeah. I'm not buying this line.
As we were coming out of the pandemic, we saw the news articles being written were focused on a record labor shortage with 1 million jobs that were open in the economy. We took a decision as a government at the time to listen to businesses then who said that thousands of them may potentially close that could impact the livelihoods of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Canadian workers. As the landscape has shifted, we're no longer dealing with the same labor shortage that we were dealing with even just a couple of years ago. So too the policy landscape has to shift. We expect that the changes made today could potentially reduce the pressure on tens of thousands of housing units right across the country.
So at least they admit their temporary foreign worker program is impacting housing in a negative way. Here is the restrictions going on in Calgary. So Calgary had a water pipe main burst, and it's still not at the beginning of summer, and it's still not fixed. And the temporary fix is, I guess, in place, and now they're doing something, and now the water restrictions are back on. So here's what's going on.
New round of outdoor water restrictions
Oh,
kicks in
too fast. I don't mean to leave it too fast. It just sometimes doesn't even register that it is too fast, or I'm seeing if there's like a specific section we should watch. But this one, it's only 2 minutes, and it's kind of all, it encapsulates it all pretty well. So we'll just listen to it all. Here we go.
Round of outdoor water restrictions kicks in today in Calgary as work resumes on a key water main. CTV's Mason DePatie joins us now from Calgary with the latest. So Mason, what's happening with the restrictions and how long are they expected to last?
Well, from thirstier lawns to shorter showers, it's pretty much deja vu of back in June. Stage 4 outdoor water restrictions are back in place today, and they're the strictest the city has. It means you can't use any water outside, even if you're using a hose with a spray nozzle, hand watering, or watering new grass. You can use collected rainwater, though, worth noting that. People are also being asked to conserve water inside, trying to cut back use by 25%. The city says you can do that by flushing the toilets less, running the dishwashers and laundry less as well, and taking showers under 3 minutes long. And Marcia, the only real difference this time around from when it first burst in June is that pools and ice rinks can stay open this time around.
Okay, so what are you hearing from people, particularly business owners, Mason? What are they saying about this?
Yeah, for most people, Marcia, it's an inconvenience. You know, there's the detours and the traffic inconveniences, but also the water restrictions change people's daily habits. But the businesses, they really feel it. Landscaping companies specifically say they've been having a tough summer this year, and the second round of restrictions certainly isn't helping that. They were actually seeking exemptions from the city, but the city says the bylaws are pretty strict and relief isn't likely. The city says we need to keep water consumption under 450 million liters per day. That's the target. If we start using more than that, then we'll deplete the underground reserves. And when that happens, we'll go under a citywide boil water advisory and face other challenges. But we were able to use less water than the last time around, so we really don't expect to see that happen, Marcia.
So it's a carrot and a stick. They're going to do everything they can to influence you to make the right choice, right? The right choice according to the government, right? Not the right choice for you, but the right choice that the government wants you to make. So it's interesting how they use that. And if you don't, we'll be under a boil water advisory and whatever other punishments we can think up, lockdowns or something, right? Because of the stinkiness, right? You haven't showered, Calgary, so you can't go out. Toronto Star is reporting Pierre Poilievre's overheated insults. Oh, this should be in the election area. Here, I'll just move it down to the election area because it's kind of ridiculous, and it's not pure politics. It's more election politics. Canadian Independent says Ontario's farmers are concerned, and concerned citizens protested at the Township Council building this evening over Waterloo region's attempts to acquire 770 acres of precious farmland for reasons that remain unclear. In an April 11th, 24 press release in Cambridge, or press conference in Cambridge, Ontario, Premier Ford said he asked regions and municipalities across the province to assemble land for potential industrial investment purposes, which appears to include 770 acres of farmland in Wilmot Township, just outside of Kitchener, Ontario, between Navziger Road and Bleems Road and Wilmot Centre Road. The Canadian Independent visited Wilmot Township shortly after Ontario Premier Ford's press conference in April to investigate what was happening and who would be affected by this land grab. We learned this land grab would affect precious farmland that amounts to 582 football fields in size, include 6 farm owners, and would disrupt or decimate a significant portion of agricultural activities in the area. Nobody we spoke with at the time could tell us why the region wants the land. The region remains tight-lipped about why they are attempting to take the land and will not say if there is a buyer or not. We visited Mountain Oak Cheese back in April, which is affected by the land grab. They're an award-winning, highly reputable dairy farm and a fair-sized cheese production company that sells a wide range of cheeses locally from its storefront. Mountain Oak Cheese also supplies its products to hundreds of major and independent grocery stores as well as various other businesses across the province. They told us they were approached in May 24 with an offer to buy their land at an unreasonably low price per acre, and that the region's plan was to start leveling the farmland as early as August 24. That's now. And At the time, none of the 6 landowners were willing to sign any agreements, leaving everything in a state of uncertainty. The Canadian Independent attended the protests at the Township Council building in Baden, Ontario, to check in with the farmers and get an update. Today, we learned that the region has successfully purchased roughly 20% of the 770 acres from one farm owner, destroyed $160,000 in crops that were almost ready for harvest, and is continuing to pursue the remaining 80% of the land. We also learned that the farmers have been trying to obtain freedom of information requests about the purpose behind the land grab, but have been consistently denied. So it begs the question, what is the region hiding? The Canadian Independent will continue to monitor this story and bring any updates. So that's, I mean, good that they're monitoring this, but I thought that the region had backed off. I thought that the Doug Ford government had backed off on this, but apparently not. And apparently BlackRock's involved as well. So that's news to me, which I wasn't aware of. Here's City News reporting on the same thing. The Fight for Farmland group is searching for answers. Fight for Farmland group is searching for answers once again after an additional 21 Freedom of Information requests to the region of Waterloo for transparency on the controversial land assembly in Wilmot were denied. The latest denial of information comes in response to the Fight for Farmers asking the region why their original requests replied to in early July were denied in the first place. We're continually disappointed by the lack of transparency surrounding this proposed industrial megasite, said Alfred Lowrick, spokesperson for the Fight for Farmland group, in a press release. Despite 2 Wilmot Township councillors standing up and thousands of people in our community demanding more transparency, our basic questions remain unanswered for the second time. The ongoing secrecy is deeply troubling and raises serious concerns about what the region might be hiding. We are left to wonder if the necessary investigations, studies, and research have been conducted for this massive proposal, which could have such profound impacts on our community. Ontario Place doesn't seem to be very well thought out or planned. The Ontario Science Centre has been a disaster. The Greenbelt was a fiasco. This seems to have more fingerprints of that, said Thompson. That lack of public engagement, lack of consultation, lack of planning, and just trying to force something that isn't going to fit or work. The group argued the provincial non-disclosure agreements signed on the land assembly have placed a muzzle on elected officials and staff. So they can't say anything, and the Freedom of Information requests keep getting denied. So they're using the law and opaque policies and in-camera meetings and agreements to basically make it so that they don't have anything to fight, right? There's nothing to fight. They just move forward, and you're kind of left standing there saying, well, I own this land. They can't move forward. But will they steal the land from you? Will they take it from you? It seems, I mean, I don't know. Here's what's news chat news today. And they say Medicine Hat's mayor's salary has been restored and most sanctions reversed in judge's ruling. But the weird thing is she has to apologize. Now, I would state that if you were rude to somebody in a meeting situation, right? If the decorum of the meeting demanded that you not be rude to somebody and you were rude to somebody, okay, fine, right? Like these things could happen. However, doing that in a meeting is probably the same thing as using a political majority to punish your political competition or people who have a different idea than you. I think they're the same or similar. So like if somebody was rude to you, but they also got a bunch of bullies together and stripped you of your salary and mayoral powers, that might be the same analogous. Like those two things might be the same thing. So it's weird to me that this woman is being restored, having her mayoral powers and her salary restored, but she has to apologize to this guy who was rude to her. But this guy who was rude to her orchestrated an improper use of the majority to punish this woman. And so like I would argue that that's probably very similar to being rude in a meeting where you're violating meeting decorum. Like you're orchestrating a coup. It might even be worse. It's probably worse. Medicine Hat's mayor's salary restored. Okay. Mayor Lindsay Clark's salary was restored and many of the sanctions placed on her by Medicine Hat's City Council reversed by a Calgary judge who in a Monday ruling wrote some of the measures were unreasonable, but also agreed Clark broke the code of conduct by mistreating the city manager. Okay. Justice Rosemary Nation, who heard arguments from the lawyers from the mayor and city in a hearing this month, said in an 11-page judicial review ruling she decided not to send the issue back to a council unable to match sanctions to the misconduct. Councillors appeared to have no sense of proportionality in crafting sanctions and have imposed sanctions that have no rational connection with the breach of the code, Nation wrote, adding, it appeared council went down the list to tick off every box found in the code of conduct. Nation, a justice of the Court of King's Bench, decided to strike down 4 of the 6 sanctions imposed by council on Clark in March, calling them disproportionate and unreasonable. Clark is able to once again preside over council meetings, formally represent City Council as its official spokesperson, and attend meetings of the administration committee. The mayor will also receive her full salary after council decided to cut it by 50%. It was not clear if the ruling if Clark would be paid retroactively to when she was sanctioned on March 21st. I would say yes, and then if there was any pushback on that, like if I was Clark, I would go to the city clerk or whoever like does the payroll and say, this is retroactive, pay me out now, and I want to check and I want it before I leave this building type deal, like in the next half hour. And if you don't, I'm going to go get clarification from the judge because this needs to be sorted out toot to sweet. You know what I'm saying? The judge did not specify if Clark's salary would be restored retroactively as requested by the mayor's lawyer during a judicial review hearing. Nation upheld council's first 6 sanctions, requiring a letter of reprimand and for Mayor Clark to apologize to city manager Ann Mitchell. I guess it's presupposing that Ann Mitchell had anything to do with the tit-for-tat sanctions. However, again, if you're being improperly sanctioned and you're rude to somebody, is that really the priority? It seems out of place. It seems strange, like a square peg trying to enter a round hole. It seems weird. Like, of course she should apologize. You know, she's really the wrong one here. But like, no, she's the victim here. Victim blaming, forcing the victim to apologize. It's like, listen, we all understand you were raped, but you understand that the clothing you were wearing was really provocative, right? And you should probably apologize to the rapist for that because it was completely out of his control at that point, and you did that. It's like, no, I don't think so, right? I don't think so. This is weird. This is a weird road to go down, and I think that's strange. And no, like you're wrong. And maybe that's a bad analogy, but I think it kind of maps. Council found Clark failed to treat with Mitchell with the courtesy, dignity, and respect during an exchange with Mitchell at a public council meeting in August 23, a finding that Nation described as a reasonable decision and logical in light of the evidence. It's unclear at this point if the sanctions will be overturned if the mayor chooses not to apologize. I'm sorry that you feel that way. Next question. True North is reporting. So it's kind of like it's a bittersweet victory, if it's a victory at all, right? Like you have to apologize. We're waiting, tap, tap, tap. And it's like, how could you betray your ideals to apologize to this woman? Like if you, and I don't know, maybe this woman doesn't have anything to do directly with all these sanctions put on the mayor, but apologizing seems like admitting that you were in the wrong when clearly they were in the wrong, and it seems incorrect. It seems like this is like, but again, do you do it and move on, or is this the hill you're going to die on? You know, is this the fight worth having? I don't know. I honestly don't know. It would be difficult for me to go in and apologize. I would be creative in my apology, I think, maybe. Anyway, let's move on a little bit. True North says Canada's Consul General in New York City refuses to speak before a parliamentary committee regarding the government's purchase of a $9 million condo in Manhattan in Manhattan's famous billionaire row. Well, I mean, like if they've been watching any of the other hearings, it's no wonder they don't want to show up. Like, and there's no consequence for not showing up. So yeah, think we'll miss that one. Thanks for the invitation, guys. We're out. We were boating that weekend. Yeah, sorry. Brian says, nowhere in the CBC article does it mention that Pierre Poilievre said he would do this 2 weeks ago. Liberal state media is misleading you. Pay attention. So apparently Justin Trudeau has come out. Remember when Poilievre came out and said he would sanction the Chinese EVs, and he had a whole list of things coming in. All of the EVs that are coming in from China and EV batteries and things like that. All of that are being sanctioned or changed by Poilievre, or charged to align with the U.S. charges that they've put on to protect their industry and their car market and all the rest of it. And Polyev, a couple of weeks ago, I remember reporting on it, was basically saying, like, if you don't do this, you're harming our economy. And, you know, I think he's probably accurate about that. And I said as much at the time. And so now Justin Trudeau is aligning with this. Again, it's in preparation for an election coming up. I think that's what's going on mainly here. Let's talk about China very. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful